What's going on, cooking fans, and welcome back to another episode of Then We Eat. Fall is in the air, vegetables are soon going to have to come out of the garden, so that means on today's episode, we're going to be doing some stuffed peppers. That's right, Labor Day has come and gone. Yes, I'm wearing white, sue me. But today, we're going to be doing one of my favorite recipes. These stuffed peppers are terrific. You're able to use the vegetables out of your garden, including those delicious green and red, yellow, orange, whatever kind of bell peppers you have. And we're doing it with my special sausage recipe. You'll be seeing that video later, so let's get into it. So let's start things off today with the rice. I will leave a list of the full ingredients in the description below. As I go along, I'll also tell you how much of each ingredient I'm using. So first, that rice. We're going to use a cup of rice, a cup and a half of water, and I added a little bit of olive oil as well, just to try to keep it from sticking to the bottom of the Instant Pot. So let's go ahead and add those ingredients now. Now, one thing I should point out, I did rinse the rice first. You want to get as much of that starch out of the rice as you can before you cook it. So we'll start, we're going to add a cup and a half of the water and the olive oil to the pot. Then we're going to add the rice on top of that. This way, at least the rice is sitting in the water and it's not sitting directly on the bottom of the container. I'm going to give that a quick stir just to flatten it all out a little bit. Then we're going to replace the lid. We're going to turn on pressure cook. We're going to do low pressure for 10 minutes. And then we'll be back in 10 minutes with perfectly cooked rice. Okay, so the rice has been 10 minutes. While that was going on, I was able to get the rest of my ingredients prepped so we can carry on. But first thing I need to do, I do need to release the pressure from the Instant Pot. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. Then we'll check the rice and we'll move on to the next step. That rice looks pretty good to me. I'm not sure if you can quite see the bottom, but that olive oil did a terrific job. Normally when we've done rice in the past, there's been quite a bit of rice stuck to the bottom. There's not nearly as much stuck this time. It is still stuck, but it's a lot better. So I'd say we're good on the rice. We can move on to the filling, or the rest of the filling anyway. Okay, so we're over at the stove now. We're gonna turn our stove onto about medium-high heat. You probably only want medium generally. Our stove runs a little cold, so I have to turn it up a little more than medium. So let that heat up. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of oil, and then we'll carry on. Okay, so the pan's starting to get pretty warm. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna add our 2 tablespoons of olive oil to that, and then we're just gonna let the olive oil heat up for a minute or two just before we start adding the rest of our ingredients. I like to give it a bit of a twist around just to coat the whole bottom of the pan, and then just let it there and heat up. Okay, so that oil is pretty well heated up now. There's a nice shimmer on it, which is exactly what you're looking for. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna add 1/3 cup of onions and a pound of sausage. Now the sausage we're using for this recipe is my special homemade sausage. Keep your eye out for that video coming out in the not too distant future. So let's go ahead and get those ingredients and start mixing them together. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna break that sausage up, let the sausage and the onion cook away. Once it starts to be cooked a little bit, we're gonna add some garlic to this, and then move on to the rest of the steps. So we'll just let this go ahead, we'll bust it up, and we'll let it cook down some. So 2 things you're looking for as this is cooking down. One, you want that sausage to become nice and brown and cooked right through. And two, you're looking to sweat those onions, which basically means you've got a white onion that kind of turns more of a translucent color and gets nice and soft. You don't want to go too far and have them start browning and have them more like a fried onion. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with where things are at here. The sausage is nice and brown. The onions are nice, translucent and soft. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna add our garlic. It's very important that you wait until this point to add your garlic. You wanna bring out the aromas and the flavors of the garlic without burning it. If you burn it, it's not very good. So you wanna make sure that you get that in after things are well along. Then you're gonna add about 3-4 cloves of garlic. Let that cook down for a minute or two just to kind of get the garlic hot and cooked a little bit, and then we'll carry on. So let's go ahead and let's add that garlic now. We'll give that a quick stir in. Let that get going for a minute or two. Oh yeah, you can already start to smell that garlic. I love the smell of cooking garlic. It's just one of those smells that every time I smell it, just makes me happy. So that's perfect. Now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add our wet ingredients. I've got a 2-cup measuring cup here that's got 14 ounces of diced tomatoes, a half a cup of chicken broth, and a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. We'll go ahead, we'll add that to our pan. Give that a quick stir, just kind of mix it in a little bit. And then we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna add our dry ingredients. So again, I've got a bowl full of dry ingredients here. I've got a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of pepper, a half a teaspoon of crushed red chili flakes, half a teaspoon of basil, a half a teaspoon of oregano, and a half a teaspoon of thyme. So we'll go ahead, we'll kind of sprinkle that over the top of it. Then we'll mix it in and we'll let that cook down for about 5 minutes or so, just to kind of let the flavors meld a little bit. And while you let those flavors meld, you're also going to want to cook that down a little bit at the same time. As you can see here, it is pretty wet still, so you let that cook down a bit. Some of that moisture will evaporate, some of it will cook into your spices and your meat and your tomatoes. It'll get a little thicker, which will be perfect for when you fill your peppers. And while you're letting that cook down some, you're going to want to go ahead, you're going to add the rice to that as well. That's also going to absorb some of that liquid and get you that nice consistency you're after. So we'll go ahead, we'll mix the rice in. We'll let that cook down some. If you don't like rice, you don't have to add it, but I can tell you, I'm not a rice fan myself. This recipe is still very good with the rice in it. It's also a really nice filler in this dish so that you don't have to use quite so much meat. Rice is obviously much cheaper than the meat is. As you can see, that's quite a bit thicker than it was before, so we'll just let that cook down for a minute or two longer and then we should be good to go. So I'd say that's perfect there now. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna take that off the heat. We'll let that cool slightly, and while that's happening, we'll go ahead and we'll prep our peppers. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna prep our peppers. While we're doing that, I am gonna turn our oven on. That way it's preheated to 375 degrees. And then when the peppers are ready to go, they can go right in the oven. So you wanna take 4 bell peppers and you have one of 2 choices. You can either cut the pepper all the way around and basically cut it in half, or you can take the top of it out and you can stuff the meat right inside of the top of the pepper and stand them up when you bake them. I find it easier to lay them down and have 2 halves. Just makes a lot less of a nightmare when you're trying to stand them up, and it makes it much easier to stuff them. I have done them standing up, and I find this way a little bit easier. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cut them all in half. I'll show you how to core them, how to clean them out, and then they'll be ready to be stuffed. So basically it's nice and simple. You just wanna cut it right in half, or as close to half as you can. You get 2 halves that look something like this. And then I just take my knife, and a lot of this looks okay, but if you see any of the white, just kind of cut it out. You can tell the white, it is a little bit softer than the actual meat of the pepper. So just go ahead, kind of clean that out. And then when you get to this core here, all I do is I take my knife and I just run it right along the edge of the core, and you just want to cut that right out. So something like that, and then I just pull it out, and then again, just want to take your knife and you want to just kind of run it right along the edge of the inside of the pepper. Just get that white stuff out of there. And then what you can do when you're done that, we like to compost. So you're just going to throw that in the compost. I don't know, you might be able to see some seeds still left in there. So just turn that over and take the flat side of your knife, just kind of tap it nice and softly, and you'll knock all those seeds out, and there you have it. Nice, perfectly clean pepper, ready to be filled. So I'll go ahead, I'll clean the rest of these peppers, and then I'll come back and we'll show you the next step. If you're a little concerned about using your knife to knock the seeds out, as you can see, you can just take your hand and whack at it too. Just be gentle, you don't want to compromise the shape of the pepper too much. So this pepper here, actually, I must have cut it in a different direction than I cut the last one, because the white is actually in the middle of this pepper. So you're going to do something very similar. I just take my knife, you got to kind of be careful here, and just try to stick your knife in there and just kind of be gentle and just kind of wedge it out there as best you can. And you take your finger, you kind of pull the little bit out that you can't get with the knife. And then again, knock the seeds out. There you go. Another nice pepper to be stuffed and filled. And I'll be honest, I don't know how you know exactly where your white of the pepper is going to be, but the one thing I do like to do, you can see a bit of a crease here where you've got 4 or 5 different bits of pepper. I just like to take my knife, find one of those creases, and just cut right through the crease. And as you can see, I managed to cut right in the middle of it again. So this one has a bit of a bad spot in it, as you can see. So I'm just going to take my knife and I'm actually just going to cut right around that as well, just to clean that out of there. The other thing you can do, you don't have to go all the way around, you can kind of wedge them out too. So you just kind of cut it on both sides until you meet up, then you pop it out. And there you have it. 4 nicely cut up bell peppers, all cleaned up and ready to be filled. So let's get filling. I'm just going to place all of these on a little tray that we have to put in the oven. I'll try to wedge them together enough that they kind of stand each other up some. Some of these are a bit of an odd shape, so they might not quite stand on their own. Okay, so our peppers are ready. Our filling is done. We're going to stuff them, cover them with cheese, throw them in the oven. So let's get stuffing. Basically all you want to do, I've got a ladle here, I used it to separate our can of tomatoes. It called for a 14-ounce can. Most cans you get here in Canada are 28. So I had to ladle out half of it. So just to save a dish, I'm going to use the ladle to fill them. You can use whatever you like. But basically all you want to do, you just want to take it, get them nice and filled in there. One thing I like to do is kind of pat it into the corners just to make sure that you don't end up with air pockets in areas where you don't really have any filling. Just kind of clean the edges up a little, make it look nice. There you have it. 1 down, 7 to go. While I'm filling these up, one thing I should say is generally I'll eat 1 of these. If I'm really hungry, I might eat 1.5. If you don't want to eat a full one, or you feel like a full one might be a little too much food, you can always serve this with bread or salad or anything else just to kind of give you that extra little bit of food you need to fill you up right. So there you have it. 8 perfectly filled, delicious looking stuffed bell peppers. We're going to add some cheese to that, throw it in the oven for half an hour, then we'll come back and we'll see what they look like when they're done. You can use whatever kind of cheese you'd like. It would be really good with a nice Havarti or a nice smoky, kind of spicy cheese. We had some cheddar and some mozzarella kicking around, so I'm just gonna go ahead and that's what I'm using for this. So there you go, nice and cheese topped. Into the oven for half an hour they go. As you can see here, there's a lot of leftovers. You can do one of two things. Either cut the recipe in half if you don't want that much leftovers, or you can either do more bell peppers with them, or one of the things I really like doing, it makes a very good breakfast. Heat up the filling, toss in some eggs, kind of scramble it all together, either put it in a bowl and eat it up, or even better, make it into a breakfast burrito. They're excellent for that. Okay, it's been a half an hour. Time to take the peppers out of the oven. As you can see, the cheese is nice and golden brown. The peppers still have their form, but they're nice and soft. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna transport them onto a serving dish. Then I'll try one, let you know how they taste. Okay, so one last thing we're going to do before we get into them, I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of parsley over the top of each one. Just a little bit of garnish. Fresh parsley is always good, makes it look nice. So go ahead, I'll do that, and then I'll get tasting. So we'll give you a quick taste test here. Very good. I love this recipe. It's so good. And as they say, even if you don't want it with the peppers, still an excellent recipe. You can use it for breakfast. I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could just put it in a bowl and eat it. Lots of different things you can do with it. So that's gonna do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hit like if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you really liked it, share it with everybody you know, and let us know down in the comments below. What recipes would you like to see us tackle next? And don't forget, first we cook, then we eat. So good.